Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for How Preparation and Strategy Can Be Used to Fight and Defeat Any Ransomware Attack, presented by Information Management Today and sponsored by phoenixNAP. I'm Rayvon, the webinar coordinator of Information Management Today, and I'm so excited to bring you this fresh session with well-earned insight on the state of ransomware, future predictions, and best practices for attack prevention and recovery. Today, we were going to hear from William Bell, but due to some logistical difficulties, we will be hearing from Carl Camarilli. I'm sure that today will be a fascinating and amusing conversation. Just so you know, we will be recording this webinar in case you have to leave early. We are sending the landing page link to the chat box right now. So up next, before we go any further, I want to thank phoenixNAP for sponsoring this webinar series and helping us to make it happen. phoenixNAP offers a diverse portfolio of infrastructure services to meet the evolving IT needs of modern businesses. Through its colocation, cloud, dedicated servers, bare metal cloud, backup, and disaster recovery services, the company enables digital transformation in companies of any size and supports their growth. All services are available on a highly scalable, OPEX-based model, which makes them accessible at an affordable price point. This also enables easy and cost-efficient scaling as business demands grow. Working with industry leaders such as VM, phoenixNAP addresses the critical need for data protection with its reliable backup and disaster recovery solutions. Companies can trust it to protect their data using advanced security technologies and deliver reliable services from strategic locations across the globe. phoenixNAP solutions are designed to address modern businesses' performance, security, and network needs, whether they already have an in-house infrastructure or are looking to expand all of their services to the cloud. To learn more about phoenixNAP, visit phoenixNAP.com. Thanks again, phoenixNAP. Let's get some technical things out the way. Please feel free to ask questions during today's session. You can do so by submitting them into the questions panel on the right side of your screen. Don't forget to stick around until the end of our session to get even more fresh insights from Carl. My wonderful colleague Devin will be fielding your questions today. He will be happy to answer anything you might have, so pull up the questions panel and say hello to let him know that you're listening. Lastly, if you have any audio issues during today's presentation, you may wish to dial in by phone. You can do so by selecting the More button in the upper right portion of your screen, and then select the Switch to Phone option. Today, we will be hearing from Carl Camarilli. Carl has expertise in enterprise virtualization and data protection solutions that are central to phoenixNAP's leadership position in the mid-enterprise cloud services market. Without further ado, take it away, Carl.
All right, thank you so much, Raven, for introducing me there. Thank you for having me here today with you. My name is Carl Camilleri. I'm Cloud Services Product Manager here at phoenixNAP. phoenixNAP, as Raven was mentioning, is a global IT infrastructure services company. The company was founded in 2009 in Phoenix, Arizona, and today we operate more than, could say, 9 locations across the globe. We have been providing enterprise-class cloud hosting and recovery services across all these locations, and we try to keep parity with the products that we offer across these regions. We are also listed at the Gartner Market Guide for Disaster Recovery as a Service as a solution provider. During this webinar, I'll address some of the key issues that we're facing today in the industry with cybersecurity, and we'll also address ways on how we can mitigate these risks and prepare for the worst. So I wanted to start first by kicking off this webinar by registering a poll, right? This way, we would be able to get a feel of our audience, right? What are your current situations? What do your current situations look like? And also understand a little bit on the situation that your organization is on. So I think Raven our organizer will be triggering this poll, and you can see it now on the screen. And it would be able to, any of you fall within any of the situations, right, or any of these categories, want to hear that from you and understand the level of concern that you're currently facing with ransomware, right? And that would either be we are just looking at how we can start protecting ourselves, whether we are kind of concerned, but we are not looking at introducing any new security mechanisms in place, or neither of that, and we are not really concerned with ransomware at large. So we'll give this a little bit of more time. We can proceed with the rest of the slides.
And here are your results. What do you think of these, Carl?
All right, so actively enhancing protection of our data. That's good. That's good that we know that you are on it in today's age. Rest of the answers, we are looking. We've also internally have been looking at customers who are in the same boat, right? That they're aware of the issues and the risks involved with ransomware, but they are not really looking at taking any additional security measures in place. And this is why you came to the right place, right? This is why you're here today. And hopefully I would be able to answer a little bit of these questions through the slides. All right, so ransomware is changing, but it remains strong. So as most of you in our IT space, one of the most common types of malware that we're used to hear about in the news is often ransomware, right? We know about it, we've heard about it, we know organizations that got hit by it, and unfortunately, we know organizations that went out of business because of it. And so it's rather a matter of when and not if this will hit us, right? It's a matter of when we would be at huge risk of being impacted with ransomware or any other malicious attack. And as clearly mentioned by Mr. Robert Baden-Powell, founder of the Scouts movement, always be prepared, right? We always need to make sure that we are prepared with the best possible tool sets that we have. And the best thing of this is that in today's day and age, this is not always the case that it has to be too complex to implement or too challenging or too expensive. There are ways, and hopefully we'll be looking at them in the next slides on how we can mitigate these risks. In a nutshell, there are two main types of ransomware. You've got the crypto ransomware, where this would encrypt the data and decrypt. Decryption key would often be required to scramble the encryption. And then you've got the locker, which in a nutshell, it doesn't encrypt the data, but it basically locks the user out of being able to access it. And when it comes to data, we're often thinking of Word documents or PDF files, and that could be a potential issue for organizations. But we're also looking at the more bigger picture where you have databases being impacted, right? Applications being impacted. And we've also seen, unfortunately, managed service providers that operate in this industry, where they are a significant target for a lot of attacks and hackers alike. And the reason for this is because these managed service providers, MSPs, typically have access to multiple organizations, multiple environments. And what happens is that they find them as an ideal way to jump off from their environment and infiltrate their organizations. So what we're seeing in this chart, in this slide here, is that ransomware remains strong. It was strong in 2021, and it's going to be even more in this year and the next. We are looking at significant new technologies being introduced, so we need to make sure that any technologies that we are introducing, we mitigate and we try to understand what is their level of risk when it comes to ransomware. And we're also looking at popular tools that were used for backdoor access for Windows machines, right? We've seen the issue with Cobalt Strike beacons, and we've seen the issue with other even service provider tools that are offered in the industry. And then there's the famous Log4j, the recent issue with Log4j, which was the most exploited vulnerability with attacks occurring per hour. So this is something that us as organizations want to make sure that we are on top of. We want to make sure that decision-making teams in our companies are aware of the risks and implications. And one slide which I have presented here is the ransomware attacks that shook the world in 2021. Those numbers are not so nice. These are basically organizations that were hit by some form of ransomware, organizations that have made it public, right? Because that's sometimes legally the way that you need to go by things. And here we can see the number of payments that were requested and either made or we don't really know whether the payment has been made to the ransom, right? To be able to get the decryption key from the attackers. This is not something that we support at our company and with our customer base. We believe that there are great tools out there that you can use to be able to prevent the possibility of having to pay these illicit organizations. Some may understand that when an organization is hit by ransomware, right, there are typically two options. Option A is if the organization didn't have any tools in place to defend itself, the last resort that one would have to eventually do in order to be able to remain in business is to pay the ransom, right? Hope that the hacker doesn't come through comes through with the decryption key and possibly forgetting you forever. This is really generally not the case. We've seen that they do provide the decryption key, but eventually you're still at their mercy, right? And this is something that I think in this day and age, organizations like we operate in today is something that definitely we don't want to be in such a situation. And the other option is to actually have the ransomware removed and being able to restore all the data from backup. This is what we are pushing for in this presentation today, and this is something that we hope your organization will take as a mitigation plan. So the key thing here is to actually have a proper disaster recovery plan, which we're going to speak about in a minute, and having backup protection in place so we can restore back to a point in time where the ransomware was not involved. I'll go over to the next slide now. All right, so the anatomy of ransomware attack, right? This is a very high level way on how the ransomware attack is actually happening. It's basically a simplified version, right, of how these hacks work. As ransoms increase, and both hackers and cybersecurity firms are growing their sophistication in the ways they attack organizations, this illegal industry will continue to expand further in the coming years. The way the reasons for this are mostly geopolitical issues that are happening. You've got competition as well, but at the end of it, it's always like for the sake of the ransom, right? To be able to not just disrupt the operations of a company, but be able to make money out of it. So if we look at this anatomy, we've got the hackers, right, where they are operating the first step in the ransomware attack, where they could either have obtained stolen passwords, they could have went through an intrusion software, possibly establish access to a company's network, possibly also being able to get in from the weakest link, right? And the weakest link is typically the employee. And the employee unknowingly could open a phishing email as an example, and that email would be masked as an urgent request to do something, basically. Open a PDF attachment, open a link, and that small part of action would actually put the company in jeopardy. So one of the things we also stress on is to make sure that you have your teams trained with this, and they need to also be participants in the plans that the company has when it comes to mitigating any such attacks. In the slide here, we're also looking at protection controls, right? So, for example, like firewall, antivirus. This is more as a prevention mechanism, right? This is more as the norm where organizations have to have the clearly any ports or any firewall rules that should be in place have to be maintained well. So once the ransomware actually makes it through, installs, and it doesn't connect to the attacker's C2 server, right? This is basically a server that the attackers use in order to infiltrate and make a huge impact. Then you've got the attackers that move in through the network and locate the target data and encrypt it, right? So if there is a point of entry that got breached, and that point of entry has access to a number of resources, to a number of company resources, though all those resources that are accessible by that point of entry are all at risk of being encrypted, right? So if, for example, you have a file server or you have a database server that this point of entry has access to, that's typically also gets infected. So then the victim gets a message right on the screen where they could identify the ransomware details and ways on how they can pay the ransom, which is typically through to cryptocurrency, right? So that they would refrain from being able to trace their origin. And when it comes to the actual restoration options, as mentioned before, there are mainly two, right? Either paying the ransom, which is typically a significant amount, and then there is the option where the victim doesn't have to actually pay, but they need to make sure that they have the right methods in place, right? They need to have the right backup in place, the right disaster recovery in place. And the eventuality of that is that you go back, you restore, and then you make sure that you fix and mitigate the point of entry. All right, so move over to the next slide here. So the costs and impact of ransomware attack, we've seen a lot of this. We've seen in the news, we've mentioned this in the previous slides. The numbers are phenomenal. You have not just, remember that it's not just the amount of money that the organization would need to pay to get the decryption. It's also the reputation, right? It's also the business, with the business conversation that you guys would have with customers, right, and partners. So we have to look at the bigger picture. Brand reputation. So it's also one of the major things that we need to consider. In the next slide, we have prepared another set of questions for you guys in order to understand a little bit more about you. And here we're asking whether your business currently has any backup and disaster recovery strategies in place. This is not necessarily having a disaster recovery technology in place. It's not having a particular backup solution in place. It's more about what you have in terms of how are you trying to mitigate any of these risks that we're mentioning. So I'll give a couple of seconds until we get the answers.
Also, while everyone is filling this out, I do want to remind everyone to go ahead and get in your questions so that we make sure we can ask Carl during our Q&A portion. We're going to go ahead and leave this poll up here for, another few seconds to make sure we can get majority of you guys answering, and then we'll show you the results.
Fantastic.
What do you think, Carl?
I think that's great. I hope that the audience is finding this presentation interesting. It would be nice to have some feedback from the audience on the industries that they work in, as an example. If you've been through this already, and what I'm saying today is actually something that unfortunately you yourself or your organization that you work for currently have been through. And even at the end of the slides as well, if there is any interest from our audience in order to learn more about our offerings that we will, I'll go through in the next slides.
I do have a response here from one of our audience members. She says healthcare was hit last Thanksgiving, didn't pay, but it cost us.
It costs time, that's for sure. It costs a lot of resources, but thank God that it was just that and not cost in terms of monetary cost as well. All right, maybe we can proceed with the slides for now, Raven, and you can share the answers maybe at a later stage.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. Right, so ransomware protection planning. As mentioned earlier, employee education, employee training. Want to make sure that we empower our employees. We inform them about the risks that could be impacted through any ransomware breach. Regularly patch and update. We highly suggest that there is a yearly rotation plan that you would have to regularly patch and update. And when I say yearly, it's more like understanding the quarterly updates that you can do with all the systems in place. I know nowadays we are running a elaborate number of systems that we need to make sure to patch and update. So let's make sure we keep on that. Segment your networks. Any data that is usually within a particular network that doesn't need to be in another network, make sure that these are segmented so that the point of entry of a ransomware wouldn't actually move over to a different network or use it as a bridge to go over to another network and even bring more havoc. Apply latest privilege principle, right? So we need to provide your employees with the bare minimum privileges to do the assigned tasks. And typically, we suggest that you start at deny all and then just explicitly allow those permissions which are only required. Configure advanced endpoint protection. Let's make sure that you have the right first line of defense on your endpoints. And when it comes to endpoints, remember today, it's not just workstations and laptops. It could be also corporate devices. It could be anything that is connected basically to your corporate network. 6, enabling zero trust and multi-factor authentication. This is to provide other levels of security mechanisms in order to prevent intruders from entering the system. Provide reliable backup solutions, right? So we need to make sure that your organizations have solutions in place for being able to restore from backups and having disaster recovery and business continuity plan. And to that, I'm going to mention point 8 in the next slide. Why disaster recovery plan matters? Disaster recovery plan is not just having a disaster recovery solution where you would say you would be able to switch over to another site. A disaster recovery plan is action plan on how your organization would be able to mitigate a certain attack with all the solutions you have in place. The disaster recovery service fits in a disaster recovery plan, but is not the whole plan. So when it comes to planning for reducing the risk and mitigating the action plans, the capability for an organization to continue with its delivery of products and services typically reflect the business continuity, right? Where customers and organizations are able to continue providing service to their users. Mitigate and prevent downtime risks. Some examples: minimizing downtime, eliminating redundancies, standardizing processes and procedures, right, that they are in place and regularly maintained. As mentioned earlier, regularly patch and maintain IT systems. Make sure that we examine vulnerabilities that might be around, and ensure that core systems have the right uptime in place to be able to reduce the time of disruption. Minimizing disruptions to business operations, whether that's communication with employees, partners, and customers. Preparation for the physical workspace or remote workspace that we have seen an increase recently, right? Users operating from their own devices, and who knows what kind of risks are on those endpoint devices. Limiting the extent of the disruption and damage, right? So we need to find a way to establish alternative means in advance, right? So having a disaster recovery plan in place, emergency procedures, and a smooth restoration of the service as well. And minimizing financial consequences of a disruption is, again, having a disaster recovery plan in place, having a backup system in place in order to avoid paying huge sums of money for ransom. And the last one, there, establish alternative means of operation. As mentioned before, identify ways on how the operations of your organization can continue going without any repercussions. So, key considerations for choosing your disaster recovery solution. First and foremost, depends a lot on your disaster recovery plan. Disaster recovery plan is typically composed of a RPO or an RTO. RPO is recovery point objective, and RTO refers to recovery time objective. The main difference between these two is how the way you want to measure the frequency of backups when it comes to recovery point objective, right? At which point do you want to restore your environment? And that's typically the outcome, or the answers of these are typically through understanding your applications and impact on these applications, right? So if, let's say, you have internal systems that it would be okay for them to be offline for, let's say, 5 hours or maybe a day, such as an HR system or whatnot, then having a recovery point objective plan could mitigate your solution. But if you have systems in place, right, where it is crucial that the systems remain online, rather, for example, if that's would be healthcare, if that would be customer-facing applications that are in high frequency, right? There's a high load environment, then that's recovery time objective, where it's merely identifying the amount of time by when you need to switch over, and that's we have some customers which even minutes matters for their organizations. So all of these key considerations that we're looking at, instant speed, support, and security, are coupled with that plan. Make sure that the service provider the service provider that is supporting you with the disaster recovery or backup solution has these benefits in place. Us as phoenixNAP, we make sure that we provide the right amount of support for our customers and also the security mechanisms in place that we want to achieve with our solutions. So going over to next slide, we as a company operate with Veeam as the solution of choice for us to provide customers with disaster recovery solutions and backups. Veeam is a great company. They have great products, and we have been a platinum partner with Veeam for a good number of years now. Our partnership is strong, and the reason we want to today showcase the way we provide customers with these solutions are because we believe that the products that Veeam provides us to us service providers are products which most of you probably already aware of, right? Backup and replication, possibly it's something that you're already operating on, right? Disaster recovery services from Veeam are also probably something that you have already have experience with. But what we can bring with Veeam as a partner is to leverage the cloud as a solution provider in order to be able to support you with any requirements. So our solutions are compatible and integrated with Veeam version 11 and all the latest versions. We can support you with a disaster recovery site within hours, if that's something that you would be considering. We support VMware vSphere environments. We support immutability and insider protection. And we support also object storage, which is a very recent technology solution in order to prevent high costs when it comes to storing backup data. Right, so as a partner with Veeam, we support pay-per-use options. We support organizations with 24/7 customer support. We have a dedicated network operations team in place. We provide options and possibilities for fast recovery of environments, right? So this is where we mention the recovery time objectives, and we provide redundancy, as mentioned in our introduction. With the benefit of being able to operate globally, we can support you with any specific region where you would want us to host your disaster recovery site. A number of products that we support with Veeam. Data Security Cloud is a hosting solution where our customers would want to offload their current environment that would want to host on the cloud. We provide Data Security Cloud, and the reason it sits in this slide is because by default, you already have a backup solution in place. This is not something that we see with customers, right? This is why we wanted to make sure that we bring out a product which by default has some kind of protection for backups. And for this, we're using Veeam as our internal product to be able to support you with that. Veeam Cloud Connect is our cloud target for US organizations to be able to offload any backups to a cloud provider. Veeam Disaster Recovery, where phoenixNAP is able to act as a target for your workloads, as a secondary site target for your workloads when it comes to risks that might be anything, right? That could be ransomware. I know we've talked about ransomware today, but there are other things such as hurricanes and floods that some parts of the world are impacted through this as well. And managed backup for Office 365, basically our solution for protecting customers running Office 365 tenancy. One thing as a reminder here, probably in the IT space you are all aware, but if there are any business managers here in this call, Microsoft does not back up your data, right? Although that the Office 365 service is being provisioned by Microsoft, Microsoft does not protect the data that sits in your mailboxes, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, etc. So if you want protection for that product, make sure that you define exactly the ways and means that you want to protect your data with Office 365. These are our locations across the globe. Phoenix, Arizona is our flagship region. That's where we started. It's our home state, but we have expanded, as you can see in this slide here, across the globe. All right, and with that, I come to the last set of questions that we have for you, which are mostly around whether you would like to interact with any of our teams or be able to understand more the products and services that we provide. And not just that, maybe you would want us to support you with identifying and provisioning or try to mitigate the risks that you have, right? We are able to get in touch and have conversations on both technical side of things and also business side of things. Thank you. Raven, I think you put up the poll, right, for our audience?
That is correct. And I just closed it.
With that, thank you very much. I hope we have maybe some questions from the audience here that they can share with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we go ahead and dive into questions, I want to remind everyone that now is the time to get straight from the source insight from Carl. Great questions contribute to a great webinar, so don't forget to submit some questions. Additionally, we understand if you need to run. Just know that today's session is being recorded and you will get the recording and the slides within 48 hours. Alrighty, so with this time remaining, let's go ahead and cover some audience questions. Our first question comes in from Christina. She says, how fast can I recover compromised data with VM in case I get hit with ransomware?
Very good question there. So it mostly depends on the level of impact that you want to mitigate, right? As mentioned earlier, we typically start conversations with the your end users, right? Who are the users using the applications that you want to protect? And with that question, we typically arrive to an answer on the right amount of time by when customers will be able to fail over to a secondary site. And there are various ways on how to do that, but that significantly makes a whole difference in the conversation that follows with identifying the right technology and the right recovery time to restore your operations. So I hope I answered your question correctly.
Absolutely. Christina, if you have any follow-up questions, go ahead and put those into the chat and I'll make sure to bring them up during this portion that we have here. For our next question, it is about VM as well. This comes in from Josh. He says, does VM backup and replication provide automated failover and failback capabilities?
Correct. Yes. VM backup for replication provides, basically, it provides two possible scenarios of how you can protect workloads. There is one way of protecting through backups, right? Having the right backup plan in place, where all the workloads that you have in production are being protected with a backup policy. And then you have the disaster recovery plan, which is also supported by Veeam. And this would enable organizations to fail over to another site to continue with the services.
Great answer again, Josh. If you do have follow-ups, as always, go ahead and put those into the chat and I'll make sure to get those answered right now. And if any of the audience has any other questions, please make sure to put them in.
Sure.
And with that, that is all the time that we have for today. I hope all of you had half as much fun as I did. Thanks to our sponsor, phoenixNAP, and our speaker call, and all of you for attending. Oh, actually, give me 1 second. I did actually just get one question that just came in right now. So before we close up, I want to get this question in from Lee. They said their data. They said our data is in cloud taken care of by third party. Do they need to worry about DR?
Yes, having just backup does not always mean that you're protected. Backup gives you a certain level of protection, right? As mentioned earlier, with backups, you are able to restore back to a time where the ransomware has not yet impacted you, right? But if you want, let's say, to keep running your organization, and if you are impacted with a ransomware, you need to make sure that as quick as possible you fail over to a new site, then you need a disaster recovery plan. So if for an organization the risk of not being back online in least amount of time possible is not an issue, then just backups is enough. But if you want to make sure that the production workloads are not impacted, and you want to keep on running with the service that you are providing for your customers, then you need to make sure that you have a disaster recovery target. Also, just one thing to mention, having backups also make sure that there is a 3-to-1 backup rule being applied, because having one backup target for your workloads, that is also a risk by itself, right? In our case, we internally make use of the 3-to-1 rule, and we guide customers on how they would be able to achieve.
Thank you so much for getting that question in. If you do have any follow-ups, go ahead and put that into the chat. And with that, this is now going to be all the time that we have for today. Anyone has any follow-up questions, please reach out to Carl via his LinkedIn here, or you can reach out to phoenixNAP, and I am sure they will be more than welcome to answer your questions. So again, thank you to phoenixNAP. Thank you to Carl for all of this amazing information and for teaching us so much. And thanks to all of our attendees. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Evan. Thanks for having me.